In this video, we discuss the best states to retire to during turbulent financial times. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
Recently, I released a series of videos on the best countries to retire to on a budget. And for reference, the countries were Panama and Portugal. And the comments were outstanding, but time and again, people said, yes, but I don't want to leave the United States. Despite all the issues that we're facing, and frankly, we aren't alone, the United States is not alone in these issues, the U.S. is still one of the greatest countries to live in the world. Still, we are in unprecedented financial times. It doesn't matter if other countries are experiencing something similar. What matters is how to deal with the issue that you are facing into. We're dealing with inflation north of 8%, a stock market that has dropped at least 20% and sometimes as much as 25% depending on the day in 2022 alone, wiping out 20 to 25% of people's net worth in many cases. We're also dealing with rising interest rates. A mortgage today costs 6%. It was 3% a year ago. And so if the problems are national or even global, how can a regional solution fix this? Well, you'd be surprised. This is what makes this country great. You can experience deep culture in most major cities, in and around most major cities in this country. You can experience the majestic nature of the country if you just travel inland a bit, and you can experience a very slow but fulfilling lifestyle if you move to the smaller communities. But if you were to break down what people look for in retirement, it comes down to 6 things. First is affordability. The second is safety, low crime. The third is proximity to culture and access to things to do. The fourth is family and friends. The fifth is weather. And the sixth is access to great health care. Proximity to loved ones and proximity to good health care is individualized, meaning that there are things that people need and want, which necessarily mean that you need to take different steps than what we're going to talk about in this video. But we will address what to do for both of those categories a little bit later on. Now, it's important to note that each one of these categories means something different in terms of its ranking to different people. But given the nature of the title of this video, we're going to assume that affordability is number one, and crime, or lack of crime, is also a tied number one in terms of what you want. Let's start off with affordability. Affordability in this country comes down to 2 basic things: what the local costs are and how other people around you spend their money. If costs are high, but nobody's spending their money, it's going to drive costs down. That's just the nature of supply and demand. So as a consequence, you'll see that certain parts of the country have a very, very affordable multiple. We'll talk about what the multiple means in just a second. And the best way to do this, by the way, is to talk about the most expensive state in this country, and that's Hawaii. Now, for those of you who live in 5-0, this is not a negative comment about Hawaii. In fact, I lived in Hawaii as a child and I loved it. My dad was in the military. He flew helicopter missions out of Barbers Point on Oahu, and it was a very exciting time for him and, frankly, for our entire family. My dad is a true American hero. He flew hundreds of rescue missions in his life. And in fact, he met a very famous restaurateur. You might know this individual. If you do, put his name in the comment section below. Here's a picture of my dad. He's on the left, and the famous restaurateur is right next to him, holding the cane. If you know who this famous restaurant chain owner is, put his name in the comment section below. And like always, I will remind you at the end so you don't have to stop the video. But the Hawaii today is not the Hawaii from several decades ago. My parents bought a home in Hawaii for $35,000 when I was a kid. If you go onto Zillow today, that home is worth over $1 million. So why is Hawaii so expensive? This is critical to know so that you can avoid this when choosing where to live. For some of you, you're going to say, because it's Hawaii. And of course, that is the correct answer, but we need to go a little deeper than this to understand what to avoid. And here's the reason. Outside of military spending, because Hawaii is a very strategic place in the world for our military, 90% of all spending relates to the service industry. Hotels, restaurants, rent-a-cars are all examples of the service industry. These are all related to people coming to Hawaii as a premier vacation destination. Hawaii evolved as the tropical destination of choice with the help of hundreds, if not thousands, of television shows and movies. Think about Hawaii 5-0. The first Hawaii 5-0 started in 1968. It went through 1980, 12 seasons. And then the follow-on Hawaii 5-0 went for 10 seasons. Magnum P.I. went for 8 seasons, and the remake is still in production. They've finished filming 4 seasons, and they're working on seasons 5 and 6. Not to mention all the Elvis movies and other movies that feature the Hawaiian Islands as the backdrop for the plot. The first thing the baby boomers think about when they think of Hawaii is a tropical drink and a Hawaiian shirt. Notice I said Hawaiian shirt, not a Californian shirt, not a Floridian shirt, not an Outer Banks shirt, all of which are wonderful destinations that have beach as part of the experience. Still, there's only one Hawaiian shirt. But here's the point. Hawaii is a wonderful place to go on vacation today. And because it has such a brand with tourists, the best use for the land is not homes. It is hotels and restaurants and other elements of the service industry that service the tourism of the islands. So if you're going to build a home or going to buy a home, a house that might be $200,000 in one part of the country is $1.5 million in Hawaii. With that as a backdrop, let's get into the cost of living by state. We're going to start off with the second quarter 2022 data from the Council for Community and Economic Research. This is posted on the website, the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center. Frankly, getting a hold of this information is hard because the council does charge for it. They do a lot of work. So I'll put a link to the Missouri Research Center's site in the description below. The data is broken down by state, and in its entirety, the composite form of all 50 states, you come up with a 1.0 times cost base. Hawaii is 1.9 times, so it's 190% the cost of living on average in the United States if you took the average of all 50 states. On the other end, Mississippi is the lowest at 0.85%. So as a starting point, we're going to discard any state that is higher than the average. So if it's 1.0 or higher, it falls out. This leaves us with 29 states to work with. By the way, Midwest and Southern states are less expensive. Border states like California and New York are more expensive. Northern states are more expensive as well. And for reference, and we're going to talk about this a lot, Florida is 1.03 times the national average. It didn't used to be, but over the last 3 years, people moved to Florida, bidding up the cost of living in Florida. So now you know the parameters of affordability. Remember, the U.S. on average is 1, so we're going to go less than 1 in terms of the scale. The lower the number, the better the outcome in terms of affordability. But you can't just go by affordability, otherwise everybody would move down to Mississippi and they would live there, driving up the price of Mississippi, by the way. You need to overlay other things, and the next component is safety. And what I'm talking about specifically is a low crime rate. Nonviolent and violent crimes together, because you have people who steal stuff from your property and people who do things they shouldn't do. The challenge with safety is that it has to be a numerical measure because you can't see it on the outside. Beverly Hills, California is far less safe than Portsmouth, Rhode Island. And by the way, Portsmouth barely made the top 100 safe cities in the US. In fact, it was number 100 according to safetywise.com. That means that Beverly Hills is below the top 100. But when you think about Beverly Hills, you think about extremely well compensated police officers driving around making sure nothing happens to the stars and very rich people that live there. So safety is only available by the numbers unless you're talking about some place that is clearly unsafe. Then you know, just by driving through the neighborhood, it's not a place you want to live. And I will also know that safety by state does not mean safety by city. Illinois is the 13th safest state in the country, but parts of Chicago are quite dangerous. This data, by the way, around safety comes from the 2020 US Census, so it's quite recent. The census looks at crime rate per 100,000 people. New Mexico, by the way, is the most dangerous state with a 6.5% crime rate per 100,000 people, so 6,500 people per 100,000. The lowest was New Hampshire with 2.3% or 2,300 incidents of crime per 100,000 people. The midpoint was Georgia at 4.4%, but like affordability, we're not satisfied with just being at the average or better. We're going to do better than that, so we're going to take the top 1/3 in terms of safety. So the cutoff was number 17, Pennsylvania, coming in at 3.67% incidents per 100,000. Culture is number 3. It's quite subjective because culture means different things to different people. Some people want to be driving along Lakeshore Drive, looking at the ocean. Others want to be in the mountains and spending time with the person that they love in a very quiet environment. But there are some things that are absolutely true, and that is you definitely want to be with like-minded people around your own age in retirement. So we took out the top 10 states that had a young population. Utah was number 1 in terms of the youngest average age by state, coming in at an average age of 31.1 years. Georgia was number 10, coming in at an average age of 36.9 years. So we're going to exclude numbers 1 through 10 from the mix because we want to be around people closer to retirement age or in retirement. Next is healthcare. You don't want to move to the perfect location only to find out that there is no healthcare available. This is the case with many countries, and this is why we chose Portugal and Panama, because they had reasonable healthcare systems when we're talking about offshore locations anyway. The same thing holds true with states. But fortunately, this is an easy one. A lot of the work depends on how hard you're going to work to find the right doctor, but let's talk about how to do that. Despite a lot of comments about red tape and affordability of the U.S. healthcare system, the U.S. does healthcare pretty well compared to the world stage. It may not feel like that when you're here, but the stats do prove it out. The U.S. ranks number 11 out of 160 plus countries in terms of healthcare. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 are Norway, the Netherlands, and Australia, respectively. So if you're looking for the best of the best, well, you may need to leave this country to go to one of those three. But still, we do healthcare really well, and it's important in order to have healthcare work for you that you do a couple of things. First and foremost, it's important to have a good relationship with your doctor. You need to know how to ask the right questions, not only for yourself, but also for your loved ones. You need to advocate for yourself and those that you care about, and you need to know how to walk away fast if the doctor that you're working for just doesn't serve you. If you can do those things, you'll get closer to perfection. There's no such thing as perfection when it comes to healthcare, no matter where you are, what country you're in, but you'll get closer to having better healthcare. Still, it's important to know which states U.S. News and World Report says are the worst states for healthcare, at least the top 5, and it might be useful to avoid those. We'll take those off of the list as well. They are Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Arkansas in that order. So as you can see, we're using the list of affordability and crime, and we're paring down those states that don't serve us. The next is weather. Weather is a lot like proximity to family. Some retirees love the 4 seasons. For others, there's only one season, and that's summer. So weather is an individual choice, of course. Now, we've gone through a lot of work to get to this point. Let me tell you what the top 5 states are. So the top 5 states that offer affordability, safety, culture, access to health care are: number 5 is Wisconsin, with a cost of living of 94.8% of the national average and a safety rating of 3.3%. Illinois is number 4, with a cost of living of 91.4% and a safety rating of 3.5%. Wyoming is number 3, with a cost of living of 91.8% of the national average and a safety rating of 3.5%. Michigan is number 2, with a cost of living rating of 91.6% of the national average and a safety rating of 3.2%. West Virginia is number 1, with a cost of living of 88.5% of the national average and a crime rate of 3.5% per 100,000 people. Florida, by the way, has an affordability rating of 1.03 and a crime rating of 3.9%. And Hawaii is a 1.9 affordability rating and a crime rate of 5.1% per 100,000 people. As a reminder, don't forget to add the name of the famous restaurant chain owner in the comments section below. Also, check out my video from last week. It's quite popular. It's one that I think that you'll like. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.